Greetings, YouTubians, and welcome back to Wayne Sharp World, where today we're going to be taking a look at a highly anticipated and a highly requested Civivi knife. This is none other than the Civivi Appalachian Drifter 2. Now, before I go any further into this review, I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in today. If you like what you see, please do me a huge favor, hit that subscribe button, follow along, and I will continue to bring you the content. Now, this is one that I did kind of push to the front of the line because I did have a lot of people asking me about this one. I personally have never handled the original Civivi Appalachian Drifter, but there's been some significant changes to it, and I think it has appealed to a much bigger spectrum of the EDC community. I think it falls in lines with more what they're looking for in a knife. So let's take a look at some overall specs on this guy here. We have an overall length of 6.92 inches with a blade length coming in at 2.96 inches. We have a cutting edge at 2.875 inches and a blade width of 0.75 inches. The blade thickness on this guy is 0.09 inches with a blade material of S35 VN. So we have a more premium steel on this guy, with a clip point blade, a hollow grind, a handle length coming in at 3.96 inches, with a handle thickness coming in at 0.49 inches. The handle width on this guy is 0.75 inches, with a handle material on this one of carbon fiber and snakeskin micarta. Now, they also have other options with kind of two different types of carbon fiber. They come with a Damascus blade, but I absolutely had to roll with the S35. There was no way I wasn't going with that. And we have a liner lock, a user of right hand tip up carry, a weight coming in at 2.42 ounces, and a price of $93.50. So it's kind of getting up there for a Civivi, but I don't have any issues with the price on this guy. There's some good reasons that justify that price tag, and we will go over that as we review this knife. But first, let's take a look at some size comparisons. I really do like the size of this knife, I have to say right off the bat. It's a very nice EDC friendly size. Let's compare it to some other Civivis, because obviously if you guys want this, I'm sure you've probably handled other Civivis. So that should be everything we need for size comparisons. The Civivi Ortus and the Civivi Odium, as you can see, really right in between those two in terms of length. And one more group here that I think is probably the one that will do it for everybody. Two of the more popular Civivis to ever hit the market. The Civivi Elementum, put that up here, as well as the Civivi McKenna front flipper comparison here. So as you can see, in terms of length, very similar to the McKenna in length. Ergos are obviously a completely different story, but that right there definitely gives everything you need to know about the size of this knife. And now let's get to talking about it, because when the first Appalachian Drifter came out, I thought it looked pretty interesting, but it was a slip joint, and that slip joints just really aren't my thing. So when this came out, I was pretty excited, and I was surprised by how many people. I probably had like 7 or 8 people ask me, "Hey, you gonna review this?" And that doesn't sound like a lot, but I usually don't get that many requests of just actual reviews. That everyone just kind of watches my videos as they come. Every once in a while, I have 1 or 2 people suggest the same knife or recommend, ask me to review the same knife, and this one was a very, very popular one. So had to make sure I got this one out there for you guys. Now this blade, a very attractive and sleek clip point blade with a pretty good working edge. Now this is not like your typical Civivis where they're coming in at 14 to 16 thousandths. The edge on this guy is 20 thousandths, which I'm actually fine with. It still slices pretty darn good with that nice hollow grind and S35 VN steel. Sometimes you just don't have to have 15 thousandths. It's nice a lot of the times, but I tell you what, 20 thousandths with a hollow grind gives you a pretty good working blade, so no issues there whatsoever. I'm also glad they went with a hollow grind. They could have done a full flat grind here, and I don't think it would have worked as well. There's some knives that a flat grind is just perfect on, like a PM2, a Para 3, a Shaman. A knife like this, it just really needed that hollow grind, and I'm really glad it got it. I do love seeing S35 VN on Civivi blades. I wish they would do it more often. I wish they'd do it with the Imperium and a couple other Civivis that I really like. But this one here is a great one to do it with. As you can see, the marking is right down there. There it is, S35VN. But yeah, you can't go wrong with S35VN. I mean, you really can't. One thing is a little bit disappointing with this knife, in that there's no jimping on the top of the spine here. And I feel like this is going to be a pretty good, working knife for a lot of people, because it fits that size and it has a nice, slicey tip. But, no jimping. Really, really wish there was some jimping there. On top of that, on the place where there is jimping on the front flipper tab up here, this could be more aggressive for my liking. This is barely adequate in all honesty. Now, it does work. It does work. I'm not saying I don't really have any deployment issues here. It works just fine, but I personally, my preferences when it comes to a front flipper is I like to have a little more aggressive jimping. And you just don't have that. You can almost just tell by looking at it how shallow the jimping is. Now, it works, and I don't think, it's obviously, you're not going to deploy this so many times to where you'll actually wear the jimping. So it works just fine, but I really do wish it was a little more aggressive, just for that little, I guess, feel of comfort when I go to put my thumb on it, to where I know it's not slipping off. Now, lastly, this guy does have a really nice sharpening choil, which I always appreciate. Sometimes it's not always nailed, but Civivi does a pretty good job most of the time with the sharpening choils, and this one is even a little better than the rest of them. So really do like that. And this fuller, you guys knew I wasn't going to go past this fuller. The fuller is incredible. It adds a great touch of aesthetics, but more than anything, it adds an extra level, an extra element of fidget factor, which we will talk about more in the action, but it is a fantastic fuller. Now, going into the handle and ergos on this guy, I kind of expected them to be good, but they're better than I expected. I will say that the handle's a little bigger than I expected. I wasn't expecting this to be a full 4-finger grip, and as you can see, it easily is. Easily. So that is always a welcome feature to the knife. Now, in terms of just this material here, I'm actually a little impressed by this too. I wasn't expecting to even really like this. When I saw the handle options for this knife, I was a little disappointed. I'm not a big fan of this snakeskin micarta. The carbon fiber up here is fine, but I've never been a huge fan of this. This is a lot better than the other snakeskin micarta I've experienced on other knives. One was a QSP Gannet, and the other one, I can't quite remember which one it was. But I do like this more than the other ones I've experienced it on for these reasons. There's not as many blemishes, and most importantly, this is smoother. This has a nice finish on it, to where you can still see, obviously, you see the grain, you see all the snakeskin effect that they go for on the knife, but it has a very smooth feel. Now, not smooth to where you're losing grip or anything like that, but just it's not fuzzy. It's not fuzzy or, has that poor micarta quality feel. So I'm okay with these. I don't have a big issue with that. I also really like how the curvature of this handle, and the past couple Civivis that I've reviewed have had this feature to where the handle curves, and it just, when the handle curves like that, it really does just sit great in your hand. And it's usually a joy to hold. The only way it wouldn't be a joy to hold is if the clip is a disaster, and the clip on this guy is actually pretty good. I've been rough on Civivi pocket clips lately, and I am happy to report that I do like this more than a lot of the other ones that I've felt on knives lately. This has a couple unique features to it. Obviously, this is not your regular, same generic clip that you see on every Civivi. This one is kind of curves with the handle, very unique, completely recessed clip and screws there. That is very clean, very nice to see. And then I think this factors in more to just the overall size and the way you hold the knife in your hand. But I get a very good grip with this knife when I go to deploy it, based on this clip here. So when I go to put my fingers on it, I have my middle finger here right at the ramp of the clip, and then my ring finger is really at a spot to where I can still get a good grip on the clip there. So no security issues. I do like that a lot. It does work very well for the action of the knife. I also like how they added a relief here to get into the liner lock. Now, it's a little different in how they do it most of the time. Usually, you know, they have a cutout here in the handle too, but to keep the actual surface of the handle looking clean, they did a cutout in here. And that makes a surprisingly big difference. Actually, a huge difference, because if that wasn't there, you'd have very little room to work with, and you're really almost doubling the amount of space that you can get your finger in there with to disengage the lock. So that's very nice. Like that a whole lot. Now, going into the action on this guy, the action's good. As you can see, it is reach around approved. It's also pretty easy to use just for the regular front flipping motion. A couple things worth noting that aren't great. This is the stiffest Civivi I think I've ever gotten out of the box. Now, that's not the end of the world. All you got to do is disassemble it, lube it up. May have some grit or dirt in the bearings. Who knows? There could be numerous things causing this stiffness, but it's very stiff. Very stiff. I have to shake this a lot harder to close it than pretty much any other Civivi I've ever had. But as you can see, it does not affect the actual deployment of the blade. The deployment's good. It's just closing it. It's stiff. So I think a disassembly and cleaning will take care of that. And another thing that you'll want to keep in mind when it comes to deploying this front flipper, based on where they have this front flipper, it can be a little awkward sometimes because your thumb is already starting the motion so far back. You're not really starting in the front or even towards the top of the front. You're basically right in the middle. So sometimes you can have kind of a botch like that to where you just don't give it a good enough, push or flip, pull, whatever you want to call it. So you just have to stay through it all the way. And it does work. I mean, I'm pretty well seasoned in deploying front flippers, so it's not an issue for me, but it could be a little tricky for a first timer. But at the same time, I also think this is kind of somewhat of a decent first front flipper knife for people. It's tricky. If you get something like this down, things like the McKenna and other knives are going to just be a breeze. But again, it's just something that may take a little more practice to fully master it. But see, I did it right there because I was talking and doing other things. But it's pretty easy to get down, guys. It's really not that bad, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Now, one of the pluses of this being of the actual peak of the tab where you're going to be putting your thumb to front flip it, being so far back or really right towards the middle, is it really does make the reach around a breeze. This is one of the probably the easiest Civivi ever to do the reach around on, because it's just very natural. Like I said, that peak for you to actually get your index finger to is right here instead of up here. You don't have to reach so far ahead. Works very, very well. So that is nice. Overall, when it comes to the actual deployment of this, I would put this right up there with most Civivi front flippers. There's a couple I would put ahead of it, but this is towards the front. It really is pretty good. Now, what really sets this apart, is this fuller. Now, this is a fuller. Most knives, when you use a fuller, you want to flip right towards the middle of the fuller. So, like, if you were looking from here to here, you'd want to go, obviously, like right here. This one, you want to get towards the top, right around here. So I've got my thumb right here, and it just, of course I did that. It flips out very, very easily. Obviously, easier to do it when you're not under a camera, but it feels great. Plenty big enough to get your nail in there. You don't have to, dig and try too hard. It's not a tedious task or an annoying thing to get your nail back in that fuller. You feel it. It's a defined fuller, and it just kicks out very easily, and it's very smooth. And it's confusing to me because as stiff as this thing is right now, it's still middle finger flicks very, very nicely. Very nicely. So this knife does have a very good fidget factor to it. and a nice solid feel for as small of a knife as this is. It's hard to put my finger on it, but I feel like this just feels a little more solid than some other Civivis. I don't even know why I want to say that, but that's never even really come to mind until I got this one. I don't know if it's just like the curvature and it's not really thicker than other Civivis. I'm not sure what it is, but it feels like a very solid knife, and that is very nice. That is very nice. If you guys, this is another knife. If you like front flipping and you like middle finger flicking, definitely one worth taking a look at. Overall, it's a pretty darn solid offering. Civivi does a very good job of not messing a good thing up, and this is another example of that. Overall, I'm pretty darn impressed. It was everything I expected, and it was even a little extra with this fuller factoring into it. Really darn good. I do think it is a decent front flipper for beginners if you want a little challenge to start off your front flipping journey. But it's pretty good, pretty darn good. Attractive design, premium steel, good ergos, under $100. There's really not much to dislike about all that. I'm sorry, but you know, it's just Civivi usually does it right. So that is the Civivi Appalachian Drifter, guys. Let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope I helped you make an educated decision in your purchase of this knife. If you are looking at it, let me know what you think about it. Do you plan on getting one? They are in stock pretty much everywhere. So happy hunting, guys. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and until the next one, I'm out.